Welcome to Thriver TV, the place to break free from narcissistic abuse with quantum tools and understandings. Many people in this community have asked the question about their adult children. And in fact, once upon a time, I asked this question myself. In today's Thriver TV episode, I want to help you understand whether or not your adult child is being narcissistically abusive. And even more than this, I want to help you understand how you need to be to help yourself, regardless of whether or not your child is a narcissist. So please listen up, because I know that if this is your situation, this episode is going to help you a lot. All right, so just before we get started, I want to remind you that if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do. And if you like this video, please make sure that you hit the like button. All right, let's get started. Okay, so I want to go through what we thought would help. So first of all, I want to address many of the false premises that we have believed as parents that don't help our children in any shape or form. And the main ones are that we keep giving to our children, we keep helping them, and we think that that is going to change things. But it doesn't help. Because when we don't allow our children to experience actions and consequences, disappointments, and allow them to become self-generative, they don't have to take responsibility or get well. So let me tell you about a father I know called Lawrence, who had his 23-year-old daughter, Emily, living with him. Emily is a highly intelligent and capable girl, and she'd been through a lot due to Lawrence and her mother's breakup. Lawrence felt extremely guilty because of what Emily had been through. And she was living with Lawrence rent-free. She didn't contribute any money to bills. And she said that she was too depressed to work, so she stayed at home all day. Emily constantly demanded money from her father for cigarettes and her entertainment costs, which Lawrence gave her every time she threw a tantrum to get her own way. So it really could be argued that Emily absolutely was acting narcissistically. The way she talked to her father and the way she treated him was abysmal. And nothing was changing, and Emily did not have to be any different for the roof to be over her head and to get pretty much anything she wanted. Which brings me to the next point. Our children are never going to be self-generative or respectful and grateful if we try to shoulder them and let them take the easy way out. We may believe that by taking the burden for them that we're helping protect them and allowing them to get well. Whereas really, we are holding our children back just as a mother bird would be by not nudging her babies out of the nest. When our children have never had to flap their wings and learn to fly for themselves, their self-esteem is diminished and they're held back from branching out, taking risks and growing. And this means that they will be depressed and feeling inferior and incapable, and they're going to lash out and take it out on the people that are closest to them. I went through this too with my son Zach. Whilst he was depressed and addicted to drugs and stuck at home with me allowing him to be there and looking after him, whilst of course still lecturing and prescribing, which was my futile attempts at trying to get him motivated, he didn't get better. It was when I forced him to move out at 19 years of age and started working diligently on myself to stop seeing him as broken and hopeless that he came into his power and light. And truly, I was so close to believing that he was narcissistic, and yet he's anything but. Rather, he was sick and was being enabled by me to stay sick. Also, whilst my son Zach stayed at home, I was receiving the abuse from him that confirmed that I wasn't yet clear on what was or wasn't my reality of self-love and self-worth. When I became clear and stood in my power, values and truth for my life, he followed. So let's look at what is necessary when suffering trauma from your child. How do you know if your child is narcissistic or not? The truth is, you won't know until you get clear on your own healing, solidness, values, and truth. And I really want you to know this from the very bottom of my heart. If you have an adult child who you suspect is acting narcissistically, you're not going to help them get well or make them start treating you decently and respectfully until you start respecting yourself and take a stand in your truth. I've seen parent upon parent in this community, as I did for a long time also, try to stop the terrible trauma that their adult children are causing them when they themselves, the parent, are still broken and traumatized. It doesn't work. I've never seen it work once. And I really don't think there is any time that quantum law is more important and more vital for us to get right than when we're dealing with the challenges and the heartbreak we're suffering with our children. Quantum law is so within, so without. So what does that really mean? It means be the change you want to see. And I think it would be fair to say that we want to see decency, respect, and integrity from our children who are hurting us. This means that you need to be this for yourself in order to have this show up outside of you as your experience, in your experience, from anyone you're struggling with, including your child. So what would decency, respect, and integrity to self look like? Let's go back to Lawrence and Emily. These things would mean to Lawrence getting money for board and bills, and to only accept non-abusive communication, and to lay down boundaries and time limits by which time, if Emily didn't honour them, that she would need to move out. And we may not realise at the time that maybe it's our own guilt which we're pandering to, or the fear of our children not loving us, rather than thinking about the consequences of enabling our children in their stuckedness. Emily wasn't getting well any more than any of our children do when we leave things the way they are, hoping something will change. Quantum law is absolute. Nothing changes in your experience that isn't pleasant until you change who you are being in the dynamic. Lawrence wasn't changing. He was doing the same thing, trying to make Emily change whilst he wasn't loving and respecting himself. How was she ever going to love and respect herself and him when he, as her parent, wasn't being this for himself? She wasn't, and she couldn't. She continued smoking, drinking, refusing to work or contribute, and being abusive towards her father. Because Lawrence was being abused and drained of his life force and resources, he was getting sicker and sicker too. He started drinking as well to numb out his pain. He couldn't expand on his business ideas, and he had unsuccessful dating experiences, all because he couldn't be present and healthy in his life as a result of Emily's pressure and demands. This is the deal with our adult children. If we allow them to stay sick, we get sick and we drown with them. There is only one way out, and that is to lead the way. Then we will see if they are narcissistic or not. In the case of my son Zach and Emily, I'm so happy to report that Lawrence with his daughter finally understood what I did, that our children were never going to get well the way things were, and neither were we. It was several years after my situation with Zach that I helped Lawrence get very clear on what was necessary. This is what I told him: when you know that you loving and respecting yourself is the most important thing here, then she will have the chance to move up and join you. Otherwise, it can never happen. Lawrence did a lot of work on himself with NARP to shift out of his terrible feelings of guilt and obligation, as well as the fear of losing Emily altogether. Then he calmly and clearly told her that she had a month to get a job, and that this would be what she would need to pay from this date on for her board and bills. She didn't take him seriously, and when the date came, Lawrence told her calmly and clearly to pack her stuff and leave. She called him every terrible name she could think of. He held his ground and did not capitulate. Emily moved in with a girlfriend who naturally was not going to put up with paying Emily's way. Emily got a job in a cafe within a week, and every time she asked Lawrence for money, he said no. Emily stopped drinking and smoking and started saving for the things that she needed and wanted. Today, only 3 years later, she works as a successful graphic designer in her own business that she loves. Her and her father have a great relationship. After she moved out, he said he would hang up or refuse to talk to her if she was abusive, and he did. 2 years ago, Emily thanked her father profusely for setting those boundaries with her and has apologised profusely for her past behaviour towards him. She loves and respects her father immensely, and his door was always open to her when she was being like that, when she was healthy. Emily did a complete 180-degree turn on the way she used to treat Lawrence because he loves and respects himself now. And absolutely, Lawrence had to go through a great deal of discomfort and pain. He had to keep holding his boundaries and continuing to let go of his guilt and wanting to rescue her. Look at the results, just as it was with my own son, Zach. Walking the truth powerfully and calmly and keeping working on ourselves inwardly with NARP creates a solid, healthy inner and then outer template for our children. Our children often follow and develop into where we go. Emily may have turned out to be narcissistic if Lawrence hadn't continued with his own, if he had continued on with his own powerless, codependent behaviour. And as it turned out, both ended up being whole, healthy, self-generative people. And truly, as parents, it only takes us to lead the way. Okay, so let's have a look at when your adult child is a narcissist. And I do know many people within this community who devastatingly have suffered a child who is narcissistic and who's a narcissist. In the case of your adult child being this way, it can be terrible, especially if they have children as well. Many a grandparent has had the grandchildren used against them horribly by their narcissistic adult children or stepchildren. And I want to share with you this story about Jeannie and David, whose adult narcissistic daughter, Marina, was abusing them awfully. Marina would use her parents constantly for babysitting duties for her 4 young children. Jeannie and David loved their grandchildren, but struggled greatly with their daughter's demands, accusations, anger, and inconsistencies. And often they went through the gut-wrenching times when Marina would threaten to never let them see the children again. The children, whilst in their grandparents' care, would tell them what terrible things their mother had said to them about them. This broke their hearts, not to mention how Marina expected her parents to do so much for her kids, things that she wasn't taking responsibility to do herself. And there was never gratitude, just abuse for their love and efforts. When Jeannie contacted me, she said that Marina had been difficult all their lives. And now that these 4 precious babies were in the mix as well, it was literally killing her and her husband. I convinced Jeannie that the most important thing for her and her husband, as well as her grandchildren and even Marina, was for her, Jeannie, to lead the way and get well. Jeannie worked with NARP, letting go of the traumas within her that Marina was inflicting, and also did healings on her husband and her grandchildren by proxy. Jeannie felt calmer and more confident with what she was dealing with and saw a bigger picture that she was working towards. Jeannie started laying boundaries with her daughter, requesting she be contacted and arrangements made without last-minute demands. And Jeannie stopped allowing her love for her grandchildren to allow her to be manipulated and abused. If they missed a doctor's appointment or didn't get to school on time, that was not her responsibility. At times, it broke her heart not jumping to Marina's attention for her grandchildren, but she understood sometimes you have to lose the battle to win the war. And she was determined to be the model of love, truth, and integrity that she wanted these little ones to become in their lives. The inevitable happened. With her boundaries came Marina's nasty efforts to rip the boundaries down. That didn't work. So the next usual thing happened. The ever-threatened discard. Marina pulled her trump card on Jeannie, telling her she couldn't see the children anymore. Through a torrent of tears, Jeannie shared this with me, and I kept lovingly bringing her back to the quantum truth of so within, so without. I said, if you look after emotion first, if you release all of the traumas from inside yourself, the space opens up for positive and healthy change. Jeannie got to work, and that's exactly what she did. She got stuck into her NART modules daily to keep upholding her truth and strength. A week and a half later, Marina contacted her asking her to look after the children. Jeannie responded by saying she would send Marina an email laying out the limits to this, which was the healthy boundaries Jeannie needed to have respected for her to be a part of Marina's life again. Jeannie got an abusive email back from Marina in relation to those boundaries. Jeannie again went inwards to release what that had brought up with her rather than reply. 2 days later, Marina sent her an email agreeing to the boundaries. Jeannie to this day has to walk a determined line with Marina, and has also had to let go of any expectations of having a healthy or happy relationship with her daughter. However, she sees her grandchildren regularly, and her and her husband also have them for school holidays for extended periods of time, which they love. The grandchildren are all so much healthier since Jeannie's shift, and I have no doubt with their grandmother's dependable, empowered role model of aligned values, truth, and respect for herself is calling them to follow. Can you imagine if this hadn't happened? They would have had even more role models of trauma, powerlessness, and victimhood. All right, so let's have a look at the ultimate lose it all to get it all. I remember once hearing the expression that enabling others to hurt us and take from us is like watering their lawn whilst ours turns brown and dies. Not only are we not teaching them to be self-generative and inwardly fulfilled, we're killing ourselves in the process. The truth is, if we stay sick and are sick in any dynamic, we're not in a position to help anyone, and we only contribute to the toxic sickness. In Emily's case, Lawrence had to risk her failing at looking after herself or leaving him for good. But something spectacular happens when necessity becomes a driving force. People step up. Something else extraordinary happens when we start to love and approve of ourselves and actualize what that really is in real terms. Key people in our life who didn't start to. In the case of Jeannie and Marina, Marina didn't want to have full responsibility of her children. She needed her mother and was going to treat her as badly as her mother would allow it. When Jeannie no longer allowed that bad treatment, it stopped. More than this, for all of us, when we release the painful trauma of the losses of that and those closest to our hearts and reach the full resolution of being the examples that we wish to be, live and see in our world calmly and lovingly, then we often receive these people and things back in our life in healthy ways. Gosh, it's huge. And when our children and grandchildren are concerned, it takes everything we have. But what choice do we have when we break it all down and understand the deeper layers of the quantum truth of all of this? If we want to be healthy and have a healthy world and our future generations to be well, there is nothing else to do but heal ourselves and lead the way. So I hope that this Thriver TV episode has helped grant you some goals directions and power regarding your difficulties with your adult children. And also, please know there are beautiful people in this community who have had no option other than to let go and go no contact with their children. And we may think that this would be a trauma that would destroy us. Yet I promise you that the people working with NARP who have made this decision have been able to get to peace and free themselves and live their full lives. Such is the extent of detoxing us through a release that we can create for ourselves. It always does come back to the same thing. Heal ourselves, and then all that is healthy can and will follow. We can't make other people healthy. We can only lead the way by being that ourselves. So I really hope that that's clear and that it makes sense. So if it is, I want you to write below. If my mission is my healthiness, then I inspire all of life in the healthiest of ways. So again, if my mission is my healthiness, then I inspire all of life in the healthiest of ways. It's really powerful and it's so true. So if you are ready to make your inner and then outer worlds healthy for you and your future generations, join me by clicking the link at the top right of this video. Because today you can start a deep dive into the step-by-step proven formula to make this happen. And if you want to see more of my videos, please subscribe so that you'll be notified as soon as each new one is released. And if you like this, give it a thumbs up, click like. And also please share with the people you know that you could help with this information so that people can awaken to these truths and heal for real. And it's so important when we're struggling with our adult children or our children of any age. And as always, I look forward to answering your comments and your questions below. So until the next one, you know how it goes. Keep smiling, keep healing, and keep thriving because there's nothing else to do. Lots of love. Bye-bye.